While the guests were waiting, my phone rang and my mother called me. The wedding hall was alive with laughter, music, and the soft chatter of relatives who had arrived hours early to witness what they thought was the happiest day of my life. I stood there in my suit, adjusting my tie, smiling at people who smiled back without knowing how fake their joy felt to me. And then I saw her name flashing on my phone. My mother. The last person I expected to call at this moment. She never did this, never interrupted a celebration. The fact that she was calling now made my heart thud louder than the orchestra in the hall. I stepped away from the crowd, trying to find a quiet corner where the sounds of celebration wouldn't drown out what I was about to hear. My hand shook slightly as I answered, and immediately, her voice carried a weight I had never heard before. Calm, controlled, deliberate. The kind of calm that only comes when someone carries a storm inside. "I didn't plan to call today," she said, "but there are things about your wife, things you need to know before you say your vows." I froze. The words landed on me like a cold wave, washing away all the excitement I had felt just moments ago. She started slowly, deliberately. At first, it sounded like vague warnings, little hints I could almost ignore. "She hasn't been honest about her past," my mother said. "About the people she's involved with. The choices she made before you ever met her." My stomach twisted. My mind tried to reject it. What could my mother possibly know that I didn't? I loved her. I trusted her. I thought I knew her completely. But my mother's tone left no room for doubt. This wasn't gossip. This wasn't fear-mongering. This was a warning, urgent, unavoidable. Then she began to reveal the pieces of the truth, carefully, as if testing whether I was ready. She told me about a previous engagement, a secret that had vanished overnight, leaving a trail of anger, heartbreak, and unexplained money transfers. She told me about business partners who had quietly helped her settle debts, debts she had never mentioned, debts that suggested a life I didn't know existed. A life that wasn't part of the woman I thought I was marrying. My mind raced. Every small inconsistency I had dismissed before suddenly made sense. The late nights, the hidden calls, the stories she told that never quite added up. She didn't tell me everything. Not yet. The most dangerous part of her secret was the part she carefully saved for the moment I couldn't ignore. "There are people," my mother said softly, "who knew her before you did. People who watched her, tested her, and some of them still expect favors in return." The words hung in the air. Favors? Influence? Threats? I could feel the room closing in even though I was technically outside it. Every guest, every smile, every applause would soon be irrelevant because my life had just split into two paths, and one of them carried consequences I couldn't yet fully grasp. I glanced across the hall, and there she was. My wife, glowing in her dress, laughing with friends and family, completely unaware that her carefully constructed world was beginning to crack. My mind screamed to connect the image I loved with the hidden truths my mother was revealing. Was she a victim? A liar? Or someone playing a dangerous game that I had unknowingly walked into? Every memory we shared suddenly seemed like a puzzle I couldn't solve. Love, I realized, doesn't blind you to danger. It makes you slow to notice it until it's too late. I asked my mother why she had waited until now. Her pause was long enough to make my heart beat loud in my ears. Finally, she said softly, almost like a confession. "Because once you're married, you won't be able to walk away. This isn't just about trust. It's about survival, yours and hers." I felt a cold chill run down my spine. Survival? What could possibly be so urgent that I had only these few minutes to act? My mother went silent after that, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the soft, mocking music of the hall. I realized something I had never considered before. The people around me weren't just celebrating. They were complicit in a story I hadn't been told. Some smiles were nervous, some whispers calculated. I was standing at a crossroads, and the wrong choice could change everything forever. I couldn't confront her here. Not in front of everyone. Not with the ceremony moments away. But I knew I had to find out everything, every hidden detail, every dangerous secret. before I became part of someone else's carefully controlled narrative. And the worst part was this. Some of the secrets my mother hinted at weren't just about her past relationships, her debts, or hidden allies. They involved people who could affect my life, my family, and even my future for years to come. I looked at my bride again, laughing, glowing, and utterly unaware that her past was about to collide with our present. The realization hit me like a punch. I wasn't marrying just a person. I was stepping into a network of secrets, debts, and hidden intentions she had carefully shielded from me. And the decision I made in the next few minutes would determine whether I survived this day with my dignity and my freedom intact. I stayed in that quiet corner, my mind spinning, as the soft music and chatter from the hall pressed against me like a distant, oblivious world. The laughter, the clinking of glasses, the sound of people congratulating each other, none of it mattered anymore. I could feel the weight of my mother's words settling in my chest like an invisible hand pressing down. Her warning had been deliberate, precise, and terrifyingly vague. She hadn't given me details yet, but the urgency in her voice was unmistakable. Something about my wife's past was dangerous, the kind of danger that didn't shout, didn't leave marks, but could quietly destroy lives if ignored. She began to speak slowly, carefully, as if every word had been weighed 100 times before reaching me. My mother told me about a previous engagement my wife had, one that had ended mysteriously overnight, leaving behind broken relationships, unexplained debts, and favors owed to people who were still very much aware of her. She mentioned quiet financial entanglements, loans, gifts, money transfers, that had been settled without anyone knowing, as if someone had been cleaning up a trail that wasn't theirs to tidy. The thought hit me like ice. How much had I ignored? How many signs had I dismissed as trivial, insignificant? Every late-night call, every secretive smile, every story that seemed just a little off suddenly clicked into place, revealing a pattern I hadn't seen. I tried to imagine her past, piece it together in a way that made sense, but every attempt was like staring at a puzzle missing half the pieces. There were people involved, my mother hinted. People who expected loyalty, obedience, or repayment in ways I didn't yet understand. My wife's world, carefully hidden from me, seemed far more complicated than the life she presented. And yet she wasn't a villain. I knew that. She had lived her life the way she had to, navigating challenges I could only guess at. The terrifying part was that my life, my family, and our shared future were now entangled in that hidden web whether I wanted it or not. I looked across the hall at her, glowing under the lights, laughing and chatting with guests, completely unaware that her past was beginning to reach forward and touch the present. Every memory I had of her, every smile, every late-night conversation, every promise, was suddenly laced with doubt. The warmth I had felt was replaced by a cold, urgent awareness. Love, I realized, doesn't blind you entirely, it just delays the moment when reality hits. And reality had just arrived, uninvited, demanding attention. My mother paused at intervals, letting me absorb only enough at a time, each revelation more unsettling than the last. She spoke of allies from her past, people who still expected favors and influence, people who had invested in her life and might still claim stakes in my own. I couldn't imagine what that meant. Were these threats? Were they obligations? Were they remnants of a life I had no right to interfere with? Each question multiplied in my head, spinning faster than I could keep up with. My heart raced. I felt trapped, and yet, paradoxically, a strange clarity was forming. I realized that my family, my guests, and even the people in the hall weren't just spectators. They were complicit. Some had known parts of her story for years. Others had chosen silence, letting me believe in a version of my wife that was convenient and safe. I could feel eyes on me, whispers that I couldn't hear clearly but that seemed to echo in my mind. The room felt like it was shrinking, pushing me toward a decision I wasn't ready to make. Every step back toward the crowd reminded me that each moment wasted might cost me something I couldn't regain. My mother's final words were a knife twisting gently in my chest. Ask her one question, and listen carefully to how fast she answers. It sounded simple. I repeated it in my mind over and over, trying to make sense of it. That one question, my mother insisted, would reveal everything I needed to know, everything that could protect me or destroy me. I felt a cold sweat break across my forehead as I watched her from across the room, still radiant and unsuspecting. How could one moment, one simple question hold so much weight? I walked toward her, each step heavy, measured, conscious of the eyes that watched. Every smile she gave, every hand she extended, felt like a challenge now. I led her gently to a corner away from the crowd, where no one could see, no one could intervene, and I asked my question exactly as my mother had instructed. Is there anything in your past that could affect us, that I should know before we take this step? Her eyes flickered for the briefest moment, almost imperceptibly. In that flicker, I saw hesitation, calculation, and perhaps a glimpse of fear. My stomach knotted. I had suspected she might be hiding something, but I wasn't prepared for the weight of the truth that hovered between us like a storm. She began to speak, but I noticed the way her words stumbled, the way she chose phrases carefully, the way she tried to shape reality in the moment. I realized then that her life was not just a past, it was a carefully orchestrated story, one she had curated to survive, to protect herself, and perhaps to test me. Each sentence, each pause, each carefully measured expression revealed a mind trained to navigate danger, a history I hadn't imagined, and a set of choices that might affect me forever. As she spoke, I felt the weight of the wedding hall, the guests, the music, and the eyes that might never notice the tension between us, pressing on me like a shadow. My heart thudded with fear, excitement, and the burning need to know the full extent of her secret. I understood something essential in that moment. Love alone couldn't save me. Truth alone could guide me. And what I did next could change everything. My family, my life, and the life I thought I was about to build with her. I led her to a quiet corner, away from the music, cameras, and the eyes of everyone who thought they were witnessing a perfect wedding. My hand trembled slightly, not from fear but from the crushing weight of everything I had just learned. The question I had asked hung in the air like a blade. Is there anything in your past that could affect us, that I should know before we take this step? For a heartbeat, she didn't respond. Her eyes flickered with a tension I had never seen before, a silent storm that hinted at secrets I wasn't prepared to face. Then she began to speak, carefully, deliberately. Each word was measured, each pause intentional. She revealed fragments of her past I had never imagined, connections to people who had influenced her life in ways I couldn't have guessed, obligations she had quietly carried, favors owed to individuals whose expectations could ripple into our future. She spoke of alliances, of promises made long before I existed, of lives she had navigated with intelligence and caution. And yet there was no malice in her voice, only survival. She had lived through storms I couldn't imagine, and now for the first time, she was letting me see the reality behind her carefully curated life. The more she spoke, the heavier my chest felt. I remembered late nights she had disappeared without explanation, vague stories that never fully added up, messages I had casually dismissed. Every small inconsistency suddenly became a piece of a larger, more intricate puzzle. A puzzle that suggested a life filled with danger, influence, and secrets I had never signed up for. And yet, paradoxically, I found myself in awe. Here was a woman who had survived, who had navigated chaos and come out stronger. I realized that fear, betrayal, and admiration were all blending into one powerful emotion: respect. I looked back toward the wedding hall. Guests were still seated, waiting, unaware of the invisible tension that had split the room into two worlds, one of celebration, one of truth. I could feel their eyes, even if they weren't on me, and I knew that any misstep, Any visible hesitation could ripple into chaos. Time was moving, but my mind was frozen in a storm of revelation. I understood something essential. Love alone was not enough. Marriage required truth, awareness, and courage. And what I learned here would dictate whether I stepped into a life of control, or one dictated by shadows and secrets. Her revelations continued. She spoke of debts quietly settled, of allies from her past who still expected loyalty, of small favors given and taken that might seem insignificant but could create consequences years later. Each revelation painted a portrait of a life complex, layered, and far beyond the woman I thought I knew. It wasn't betrayal. It wasn't dishonesty. It was strategy, survival, and calculated caution. A life lived like a chess game where every move had consequences. I realized then that my family, the guests, and the people around us were all complicit in this story. Some had known parts of her past. Others had chosen silence. And I had walked blindly into a situation I barely understood. Every step toward the corner where I confronted her had been a step into a minefield. My mother's warning, her insistence that I ask this one question, now made perfect sense. One wrong move and everything could explode. I finally asked the question aloud, steady and calm. Is there anything you haven't told me that could affect our life together? For a split second, her eyes widened, not with fear but with calculation. Then she smiled softly, a subtle acknowledgement that she had been expecting this moment. She explained her past carefully, owning every choice, every connection, every risk she had taken. And as she spoke, I realized something terrifying and exhilarating at once. She had been waiting for me to decide whether I could handle the full truth, whether I was strong enough to accept all of her, past and present, without flinching. The realization hit me like a wave. I wasn't marrying just a woman, I was marrying the sum of her experiences, her intelligence, her survival instincts, and her ability to navigate danger. This wasn't a story of betrayal. It was a story of power, resilience, and transparency. And now she had placed the ball squarely in my court. I could step away, protecting myself from potential harm, or I could step forward, fully awake, fully aware, and claim a life built on truth rather than illusion. I took a deep breath. Every second felt stretched into eternity. I thought about the guests, about my family, about the expectations waiting in the hall. I thought about love, not the easy, romantic kind, but the raw, tested kind. The kind that demands courage, awareness, and honesty. And I made my decision. I would move forward. Not blindly. Not with illusions. But with eyes wide open, accepting the woman in front of me fully, past and all. As we walked back toward the hall, the music rose again and the guests turned to see us, their smiles wide, unaware of the storm we had just navigated. But I didn't care. Their judgments, their expectations, their whispers, they were irrelevant. I had seen the truth, faced it, and chosen life on my own terms. My mother watched from a distance, her expression unreadable, but I knew she understood. I had stepped into a future defined not by fear, secrets, or ignorance, but by clarity, courage, and truth. And in that moment I realized something fundamental. Life doesn't wait for perfect timing. It doesn't forgive ignorance. It only rewards those brave enough to confront storms, accept uncomfortable truths, and make choices that define their own destiny. Some people lose love on their wedding day. Others lose illusions and gain freedom. I had chosen the latter. If this story made you think about choices, truth, and the power of awareness in life, your next watch is already waiting. Click now to explore the power of compounding, how small choices quietly build or destroy your life. Just like trust, decisions compound over time, shaping everything silently until one day you see the full impact.